Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome dear students. This is a video for the subject of education for the course of Bachelor's in Education and for the paper of Conceptual Foundations of Education. In this lecture, we will be discussing sociological basis of education, and here the emphasis will be on the basics of democracy. This video lecture is recorded by Dr. Iram Khan. The course coordinator and the presenter of this video is Dr. Iram Khan from Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. The academic expert or the reviewer of this video is Professor Jasim Ahmed from Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. This video is produced under the project DTH Swayam Prabha channels of MHRD, at present called as Ministry of Education, Government of India. Hello dear students, I am Dr. Iram Khan, Assistant Professor at Institute of Advanced Studies in Education, Faculty of Education, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Today we are going to have a discussion on sociological basis of education, and in this lecture the focus will be on the basics of democracy. So let us start the discussion. The objectives of this session are to discuss the meaning and forms of democracy, to explain the basic principles of democracy, and to elaborate the values of democracy. For the convenience and for the ease of understanding, I have divided this session on democracy into two parts, and in this first part we will be just discussing the basics of democracy. So before discussing the relationship between democracy and education, which we are going to focus in the second session, it is first essential to understand the meaning of democracy. The word democracy has been derived from two Greek roots, which are demos and kritik. The first word, demos, means power and kritik means public. So we can say that etymologically democracy means power of the public as a whole. So if we go ahead and see some of those facts which happened in the history, we can see that the former President of America, Abraham Lincoln, he defined democracy as, under quotes, democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, quotes close. And this is a very famous quote. It may be borne in mind that this concept of democracy means only political democracy. In this sense, democracy is a formal structure of government through the we elect the person who is going to be the head of the state. So here, the elected representatives of people in general is somebody who is elected by the people, and in this way, it loses its essence, the real spirit. So the present forms of government are often democratic in name, but we can find that they are not totally devoid of the real spirit, or basically they lack some of the real spirit of democracy. To make the real concept of democracy really workable and truly effective, democratic principles and values should pervade all fields of human activity, be it political or economic or social, religious, and also in the case of education. So, if we go ahead and see all these things, we find that somehow they are lacking or they are not happening in a very perfect way. So in somehow we can find that the formal democratic structure is going to eventually decay and crumble to somehow nothing. So this is something which is giving us some sort of indication that we have to save the democracy and we have to believe in the democracy for the good of ourselves. Let us discuss the forms of democracy. The first form of democracy can be considered as the political democracy. Political democracy means rule of the people and by the people. In this sense, reins of government are not basically concentrated in the hands of a single human being or a person or maybe a party or a selected aristocracy, but people in general govern themselves through their freely elected representatives who belong to the people. The right of voting belongs to all the citizens who are expected to exercise their this voting right very much in a free way without any fear or pressure and according to their consciousness, their willingness. At the same time, the laws of the state are applicable to all citizens irrespective of their caste, creed, color, gender, or any type of biases. So, in this way, in political democracy, the administration is run by the people for their own welfare and through their own freely elected representatives. The next form of democracy is the economic democracy. Economic democracy signifies that only a few of the people who have got all the capital or who are considered as the capitalists of the nation will not have the economic power in their hands, but people as a whole will have the power, that that power which is enshrined uh, by the constitution to them. So in different words, we can say that the production and distribution of wealth will be by the people and for the welfare of all the people. And if we try to understand it in a more clear way, in economic democracy, the economic power is not concentrated in the hands of a privileged group or a few capitalists, but people as a whole share and use it for the good of all. And in this way, each and every citizen participates in his or her own way in the economic development of the nation. And further, we can say that at the same time, each and every individual of the nation is provided some sort of work, which is according to his or her inherent interest or abilities and capacities. In this way, in economic democracy, basically it gave the people who are the part of this economic democracy, uh, they gave they actually gain and they spend for the well-being of their own and for the economic efficiency of each and every human being who is the part of this democratic system. So there is no problem of unemployment and exploitation at all. So basically, it's a kind of ideal situation, and all hands are provided work of their choice, capacity, and interest. So somehow it looks very desirable and something which, if is attained, we can say that we are being the part of an ideal state. Then comes the next form of democracy, which is considered as the social democracy. Social democracy abolishes all distinctions of color, caste, creed, or gender. It guarantees equality of opportunities to each and every human being. Distinction of birth, class, or economic status, basically having money, it does not stand in the way of any individual in this type of democracy. And if we try to understand it in a more clear way, social democracy guarantees maximum freedom to grow and develop to every citizen without any hindrance. The similar freedom, which is actually taken by the first person, is being given to the other person under the this type of democracy, each and every citizen is allowed to exploit all of the inherent capacities in every field of activity, be it political, economic, religious, moral, or ethical. And in very crisp words, we can say that justice, fair play, freedom, equality, and fraternity are the watchwords of social democracy. In such type of setup, individuality of one and all is given due regard, and that's why one human being can inspire to devote his or her life for the good of all as the highest human ideal to achieve in this type of democracy. To understand the concept of democracy in a more clear and very transparent way, let us try to discuss few of the definitions of democracy. The definition given by Abraham Lincoln we have already seen, and the other definition which I wish to mention is given by Aristotle. According to him, under quotes, a government by the many, quotes close. So this is a very small and crisp definition which says that in a democracy, there are a lot of people who constitute a party or a team and they actually govern. So basically a government by the many. The next definition I'm going to quote is by Radhakrishnan University Education Commission, and this commission quotes, democracy is a way of life and not a mere political arrangement. It is based on the principle of equal freedom and equal rights for all, regardless of race, religion, sex, or economic status. Quotes close. So this again explains the ethos of democracy in a very powerful way. Now let us have a look on the basic principles of democracy. The first and foremost basic principle of democracy is freedom. Freedom is the soul of democracy. In the absence of freedom, an individual will not be able to develop all the capacities to the fullest extent. And that's why there should be complete freedom to all individuals to think in their own way, to let them think in their own way, to speak out what they wish, to discuss, to advise, and to criticize freely on their own individual way. And then only it will be possible for the human being or for the individual to develop their personality to the maximum extent. Here, it must be noted that the real concept of freedom does not mean arbitrary conduct, uncontrolled behavior, indiscipline, and working contrary to the good of other fellow beings. With the right of freedom, uh, it goes with the duty of respecting the similar freedom of others. Basically, these two are complementary and inseparable. So, if I wish to live a free life, I have to go and respect the freedom of my counterparts. So, in this way, freedom is the true sense of the term. Basically, this word freedom, in its true sense, it means that freedom to develop in cooperation with others so that all develop with the joint efforts of all the good of the whole society. Basically, as an individual, we need to develop ourselves as well as we have to cooperate with others so that the entire human fraternity gets developed, and in this way we are working for the development of our society. Now come to the second basic principle of democracy, which is equality. What exactly this means? So democracy envisages equality of all, irrespective of color, caste, creed, or gender. Each individual should be free and be able to avail equal opportunities to develop his or her individuality to the fullest. This does not mean same or similar opportunities for all. Basically, the principle of individual difference is something which, in fact, contains this idea that nobody is similar. Every human being is unique in a very particular way. So, according to this principle of equality, basically it means that each and every individual is provided with adequate opportunities to develop the individuality to the fullest extent according to the person's interest, aptitude, and capacities. In this way, besides the requisite qualifications, a person is free to adapt or adopt any profession or choose any vocation according to his or her interest and capacities without meeting any hindrance from any other individual in any manner. Then comes the third basic principle of democracy, which is fraternity. What exactly it means? This is the key to real democracy. Fraternity is basically, uh, it can be considered as the feeling of brotherhood and affinity. In democracy, all basically every citizen live in a very cordial and in a sweet and cooperative way, where brotherhood is also something which is prevailing. So in this way, each individual receives proper respect in the society. This person, this individual has a right to contribute his or her best to the wholesome development of society as a whole, which in turn promotes the development and welfare of all. And since we all work together, we all work shoulder to shoulder in democracy. Therefore, fraternity is a cardinal principle for the success of a democratic society. Now come to the fourth principle of democracy, which is justice. Uh, if we look towards the French Revolution, what exactly it advocated, it said that only three principles of democracy are there. According to them, freedom, equality, and fraternity are the three basic principles of democracy. But here in our country, in India, we have added one more guiding principle, and that is justice in all spheres of human activity. The reason why this principle is basically added, the reason of adding justice is because it's a must for the success of democracy. According to the principle of justice, all social, economic, political, and other institutions actually have to bestow equal consideration and provide equal opportunities to all individuals, irrespective of color, caste, creed, and gender. So all have to enjoy, or all are free to enjoy and exercise their own rights and duties for the welfare of the whole community. So basically everybody is equal before the eyes of law and rules of the state or the government, which are meant by the government. The rules which are meant by the government are equal for each and everybody, and this is something which justice ensures. So in this way, we have covered the four basic principles of democracy, which are freedom, equality, fraternity, and justice. So what are the values of democracy? Democracy is generally identified with the establishment of certain institutions, which we can name as: the first one is the elected legislature, then we can see the executive, reasonable to the legislature, and independent judiciary. So these are the three important institutions which basically are established as the basic component of the democracy. Then, if we try to see in a very genuine way, we can see that real democracy does not lie in those institutions, but in the hearts of the people. So, a nation may develop all these institutions, yet it may not achieve the ideal of democracy. because it is a feeling, it is a thought, it is a value. So we can see that every constituent or every type of institution is actually present, but still the actual democracy is lacking. So that is why the values of democracy are very much important, and these values should be developed, and development of institutions actually go ahead for the development of values or the value system, which actually gives a boost to the value of democracy. So let us just have a look on the important values of democracy. The first value is the respect of the individual. Basically, what does it mean? Each individual is a sacred legacy to society. In other words, we can say that each individual is an integral part of the society. And that is why one should have respect for each and every individual. So in this sense, no individual should hinder and actually go in the way of the development of another individual. The society as a whole should strive its utmost for the highest development of all the individuals who are the part of the society. So this is the first value of democracy. The second value of democracy is tolerance. Basically, liberty leads to tolerance. So basically, we can say that each individual is to be respected and allowed to develop in his or her own way. Individual differences must be tolerated. A true democrat or a person who believes in democracy should always be ready to differ and tolerate differences with humility and cordiality. This human being should never think that he or she only is right and the person who does not agree with him or her is a fool. So basically, the idea of live and let live should be the gospel of the life of any individual, accepting all kinds of differences. Now, the next value of democracy is faith in change. Like basically, if we go ahead and see the true democrat, a person who believes in democracy, is always dynamic in his or her ways and means. This person will never be static, and so he or she is a great enemy of all standardization. This person believes that change means progress, and that's why this person always will be busy in the quest of new truths and the realities. And in this way, adjustment with newer and changing realities is the principal gospel of democratic philosophy of life. So this is again a very important value. Then comes the next value, which is change through persuasion. So a true democrat certainly believes in change, which we have just discussed, but this person never likes to bring any change by force. So the change should be accepted by everybody. This person always tries to create public opinion and then brings about a change through persuasion. So this is again a very kind of important value of democracy. Then comes the next value, which is service. The inherent gospel of democracy is in the faith that individual is for society and society in turn promotes good of the individual. And that is why the spirit of social service is the essence of individual development. One should dedicate one person's life for the service of the society of which this human being is an integral part. So democratic philosophy promotes cooperation, fellow feeling or brotherhood, then mutual help, and the sense of basically fraternity or brotherhood among every individual. And that is why with the development of the individual, the development of the society will also take place side by side. So this results in the welfare and prosperity of each and every part of the or component of the society. The next value of democracy can be considered as individual and social progress. So a true democrat believes in the individual development and social progress, and that is why in a democratic society, individual and society are mutually interdependent and contribute to each other's development and welfare. And that is why a true democratic setup is one in which individual and society both develop together side by side, and in this way achieve total development and maximum welfare. So these were the values of democracy. So with this, we have now reached to the end of this lecture, which is somehow very much related to give you an idea of the basics of democracy. We have seen the meaning of democracy, which basically is the power in the hands of people. Then we have seen the forms of democracy, where we have studied the political democracy, economic democracy, and the social democracy. After that, we studied the basic principles of democracy, which are liberty, equality, fraternity, and justice. After that, we just have seen the values of democracy, which basically tell us that what should be those things which should be developed in terms of developing a value system in the individuals who are the part of the society which believes in democracy. So we have seen that the values can be the respect of the individual, tolerance, faith in change, change through persuasion, service, individual and social progress. So these are those values which are very important for a democratic nation. So these are the things, and in the next lecture we will be discussing about the role of education in a democratic country, and basically how democracy and education go hand in hand. What is basically the relationship between democracy and education? These are a few of those references and the suggested further readings which were used for developing this lecture. You can also go ahead and study more through these links. And for today, this is all from my side. We will see each other in another session. And in the second part of this particular lecture on democracy, we are going to study between the relationship between education and democracy in detail. Thank you so much. Students, you were watching a video on sociological basis of education, and in this lecture we discussed on basics of democracy. This video lecture was recorded by faculty at home during the national lockdown period for COVID-19 pandemic using minimal technical resources. Technical errors, if any, are unintentional and may please be ignored. For any queries with regard to this lecture or broadcast, kindly send your email to techsupport@dth.ac.in. Thank you so much.